Have you guys ever wanted to make realistic fire in Blender? Or maybe some force fields, superpowers, anime powers? Well, I'll be teaching you my number one technique that I use, and it's not a cycles technique, it is an Eevee technique. So this will work in Blender version 2.1, 4.1, or any later version as well, like 4.41, the newest version out. Let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and open a Blender. For my first demonstration, I will be using Blender version 4.1, but this technique will still work in later versions, just minus one little piece, which I will tell you as we get there. So this is the scene we will be met with as soon as you open up Blender. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and delete this default cube. I know, what a surprise. Shift A, mesh, and I'm going to add in a plane, and I'm going to hit R, X, 90, enter, just to rotate it 90 degrees on the X-axis. And I will be having screencast keys turned on just in case you want to follow along. They will be down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Alrighty, so on this plane, we're going to get out of solid viewed mode and go over here to viewport shading mode. This will also work in render preview mode, however you guys want to render this thing out, but I'm just going to be teaching you this in the viewport shading mode. So if we go down here, you can either change this to the shader editor by hitting this drop down menu right here, going to shader editor. So with that done, I'm going to go ahead and hit this new button right here with my object outlined and selected. So go ahead and hit new, and now we have created a new shader on it. You can name it whatever you want. Let's just name it VFX. Why not? You guys can name it, again, whatever you're trying to make here. So the recipe to making a visual effect in Eevee in Blender, as you can see, I am using Eevee. It is pretty simple, actually. There's not really a whole lot to it. It just depends on how you want to mix and match everything up. And it's just a matter of learning the nodes down here and what they all do. So you can kind of think through the end product, on what you want to create. So right now, I'm just going to be teaching you how the effect works. So this is your principal BSDF. It's what's going to be on every default shader that you create in Blender. This little green line is the output of your principal BSDF. Now this is what they call a shader right here. Okay, there's multiple different ones, but if we type in Blast BSDF, right, this is another BSDF with this green header up top, and the green object right here, we can plug this into surface, and now it's, I guess, glass. All sorts of little settings here you can change. If it's nothing, it'll just show as like a black void. So we'll go ahead and hook this up back up to surface on the material output. The material output is what will be actually put onto the object itself. So for this VFX, we're going to not really be creating anything specific, just to show you sort of what it is and the different ways you can manipulate it to get the desired outcome as the artist. So with this principal BSDF, I'm going to go ahead and keep it for now. It can be replaced with other shaders later, but I'm going to hit Shift A and search for a mix shader. So all those different shaders I showed you, you can mix them. Click and drag this right in the middle of the principal BSDF and the output, and you'll see nothing really happens for now, but we're going to change that. Shift A and add in a transparent BSDF, and click and drag that into the bottom of the mix shader. Now you'll see, again, not much really happened, and that's because we're not really telling it what to do. This factor right here, this is what controls what's going to be transparent and what's going to be based on this principal BSDF. And to demonstrate that a little bit, I'll kind of show you here. If you click and drag this factor all the way up, it will be pure transparent. All the way down, it will be pure principal BSDF. I realize it doesn't look transparent, and I'll show you why. I'm going to drag it all the way up to 1, so it should be transparent. Well, if you go over to the material properties on the right-hand side, go down to settings, this top one here that says blend mode, pull this out a little bit, blend mode, you see it says opaque. We're going to change that to alpha clip, and now it is transparent. So if we move this, you can see now it's all the way opaque, all the way transparent, and everything in between, right? So I'm going to change this back to 0.5. It really doesn't matter. because now we're going to be using a mask on this factor. So essentially what you really need to know is this recipe starts with whatever you want, a principal BSDF or an emission shader, could be plugged in here as well. BB, right? So, or basic color here could be plugged in there. That's fine too. But we're just going to be keeping the principal BSDF for now. We just need to tell Blender via this mix shader node, I want these pieces to be transparent and these pieces to not be transparent. And that will give you the pattern you want. So let's just add in a noise, if I can spell, texture. And we're going to plug the factor of it into the factor of the mix shader. Now you get this interesting little pattern here. What it's doing is it's actually taking the noise texture here, and I'll show you. So this is the exact same thing we have right here. Let me put a new texture on this, and I'm going to add in a noise texture. So if I plug this into the base color, you can see here, get a color ramp so we can kind of define it a little bit more. Okay. So you can see here how this is essentially the exact same thing. You see that you have the exact same patterns over here that you have over here, right? So you have this long strip piece here. That's the same thing here. This piece down here, same piece down here, right? This is essentially the exact same pattern. And all we're doing is we're just taking the noise texture data, going back to my VFX here, and plugging it into this mix shader. So we're telling it, okay, I want the black portions to be invisible and the white portions to be visible. Now you may be thinking, okay, great, I have a transparent cow texture, right? Well, yes and no. You can, of course, change the scale of it. You can change the detail and roughness of it. You know, get some interesting looking textures here. However you want to mess with it, you can get your desired outcome. Now, you don't just need a noise texture or have to have a noise texture. You can use whatever kind of input you want on this factor. I'm going to go ahead and add in a color ramp right after the noise texture, going into the mix shader node. All this is going to do is give me a little bit more control over which one, right? So remember, black is invisible and white is not. So if you want less, we're just going to drag the shader back towards the black. If you want more, we're going to drag the black in towards the white, right? All right. I'm going to go ahead and delete this over there. And so now all we have to do is just change this noise texture for something else. Let's say a wave texture. It's still going to be black and white data. So now you can see the black strips, or that should be black, are now transparent, and the white strips are visible. You can add some distortion, scale it, you know, whatever you want to do for your desired look. But that's basically the gist of it. So if you guys wanted to add in, let's go with a Voronoi texture. You could use a noise texture here if you wish. You can make some pretty interesting little patterns. Click on Voronoi texture with node regulator enabled and hit Control T. You can add a texture coordinate and mapping node. You could also just Shift A, add in texture coordinate and mapping. Hook them up as you see here. And then you can change the location on the Z axis. Right, so I'm gonna add a driver. It's not super important what I'm doing here. This is just a demonstration. You can add in some pretty interesting little patterns here. Right, so there's all sorts of different variations of things you can do with this as far as VFX go. I realize this is not super impressive, so let me show you how to spice it up a little bit. If you add in another color ramp into the base color of your principal BSDF, you can now control the color of these dots, right? Because all we're doing is we're taking the black and white data into the mix shader and saying, you know, where it would be black, we don't want anything. Where it will be white, we do want that. And the principal BSDF basically represents the white. You can change the transparency on this transparent node to be black and flip-flop it, but but that might just be a little confusing. Let's change some colors. If you hold Control and left click on the ramp anywhere, you can add in more nodes. You can also just hit the plus button here, minus button, but Control clicking allows you to kind of decide where it's going to go. So let's change that to yellow, say, and change this to red, I guess. Now let's add a noise texture factor on that color ramp. Now all those little dots should have some interesting little textures on them. Because now we're essentially just giving the color to them through this principled. So like I said earlier, you could delete the principled BSDF and add in an emission node. Emission into there. There you go. So now you have a little bit of strength to play with. You can turn on bloom. You know, okay, that's great. I have some dots, right? And you showed force fields and fire and all that. Well, yeah, this is the exact same shader setup I used to make both of those things. For the force field, let me just show you. I'll delete everything here. So now we just have an emission plugged into a mix and a transparent plugged in on the bottom of the mix. Let me go ahead and delete this. Yeah, we'll just delete this plane. Shift A, add in a UV sphere. Go into edit mode with tab. And we're going to go ahead and delete everything on the bottom portion. So now we have this kind of half sphere. Go down to the shader tab down here and give it that VFX shader. So now it's invisible because of what we had before. So if I hit Shift A and type in layer weight, and let's do the Fresnel into factor. We're gonna go ahead and type in color ramp, put that in between. Okay. And mess with this blend mode here. There we go. Shade smooth. So you can kind of already see what I'm doing. Change to a color you want. You could add a little more geometry, subdivide that up a little bit. You can add in modifiers such as, let's see, deform, displace, new, change it to clouds. There you go. That's much better, right? Now let's change this down a little bit. And there you go. So now it's a little more force fieldy. So I'm not really going super hard. This is not a force field tutorial. I'm just telling you, I mean, you could add in gradients and put a little edge down at the bottom, little line down at the bottom. You guys could really do anything however you want to do it, but I'm just showing you this is what I use and what most artists use to get all those interesting looking VFX. So one more example and we'll be done. So if we just add in an emission shader, by the way, I just deleted everything all the way down to the mix, and add in that transparent again. We can go delete that, add in a plane again, rotate it on the 90 like we did before. We're gonna go ahead and change the material on it to the VFX one. I'll go ahead and grab a noise texture, plug the factor into the factor of the mix shader. Add in a texture coordinate mapping node onto the noise texture. And under location, we will just type in hashtag frame and divided by 50. So if it's acting weird, just go ahead and click on the actual plane itself. Since we rotated it, hit Control A and apply the rotation. Now it's going to be going downwards, so just go back down to frame, all the way beginning of it, type negative, so it says negative frame divided by 50, and there you go. Now it'll go up, hit enter. All we need to do now is go ahead and add a gradient texture. Go ahead and Shift D these two like we did last time. Go ahead and plug this factor into the factor there. So now we're giving it a different mask to be invisible. See how this is all invisible and that's not now, right? Go ahead and add a texture coordinate mapping onto this gradient to control where it goes. So you can kind of see where this is going. Again, I'm not going super hard on this. This is not a full tutorial on how to make any of these things, flame shields, nothing. It's just the basics on the only shader you'll ever need to make tons of cool different things. I mean, really just your imagination is the limit, and that's it. Go ahead and add in a color ramp. Little tip here, you can use a color ramp to change the emissions, and it will all be emissive. You know, color that you like here, that's fine. Again, not going super hard. So now you have the basics of flame here. And these flames look terrible. There's tons of different things you can do to these flames to make them look like how I had them in the beginning. Just a little bit of trial and error, messing around with them and using the techniques that have been shown here to get what you want. So that's the end of the tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. If you did, consider hitting that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.